Good morning, Team Alabama. We are ready to read again in The Lottery Rose. Please find it on your Chromebook. We are ready for page 29. Read along with me. Remember that you are writing your facts. We're getting 50 facts in complete sentences. Georgie Burgess is our main character. He lives with his mother, Rennie. He is 7 years old. They live in Tampa. Mom's boyfriend, Steve, beats him. He doesn't really like school. Georgie doesn't like school. It could be a complete sentence. Start with a capital, end with a period. Number those. And then make sure you're asking questions along the way. And the big new thing that we learned is that he won a rose bush in the lottery. And that's the one thing that he truly, truly loves. And all the things going on in his life right now, with all of the horrible things that mom is, brings this Steve guy in that beats him up. And mom's kind of a drunk or an alcoholic. She doesn't seem to take care of him. She doesn't make him dinner. She just lays on the couch and drinks all day. And every now and then Steve shows up and pays for more booze for her. So he's 7 and he pretty much takes care of himself. And he's got this rose bush and he's running around with it. He just won it at the grocery store and he's not sure what to do with it. So that's kind of where we are. Page 29. At mid-afternoon, exhausted and hungry, he collapsed in a lot covered by clumps of palmetto and scraggly long-needled pines with new cones standing upright on the branches like green Christmas candles. Here he found shelter from the sun, and here, once fast asleep, he dreamed the dream was so peaceful and sweet that he smiled and for a time had not a care in the world. The dream had its beginning in the flower book. Even in sleep, a part of Georgie's brain remembered the pictures, and after a while the pictures became alive, and he was able to walk through a field where the wind made 1,000 flowers nod in the grass. From there into a dim green forest, and then at last into a garden where a rose bush suddenly appeared, safely planted and covered with a mass of scarlet blooms. There was sunlight touching every part of the dream. However, it was gentle sunlight, bright gold, but never burning, like the kind of beat down on the city streets at times, and made a small apartment like an oven. Everywhere there was peace and stillness in his dream, and Georgie had no fear of anyone finding or daring to hurt him. If the taunting kids in school, or Steve or Miss Cressman, or his mother should appear, Georgie knew exactly what to do. Okay, stop there for a second and let's add taunting to your vocab words. What does it mean when somebody taunts you? Taunting kids. Look that up. Okay. Georgie knew exactly what to do. He would close the book quickly, making the hardcovers snap as they came together, and hid the pictures inside. Then he would stand, not far away, but out of their sight, and he would laugh at the angry faces of the enemies who were forbidden to enter a world that belonged only to Georgie Burgess. When he finally awakened, he lay quietly thinking about his dream, half believing for a while that he had actually been away on a pleasant journey and was only now returning to the palmetto grove and to the troubles all around him. He noticed after a few moments that the air was cooler than it had been before his nap, and that the sky was overcast with his black clouds that meant the approach of a spring storm. He was grateful for the coolness and remembering his plan to find Mrs. Sims. He got to his feet feeling refreshed and hopeful. Realizing now that his heedless rushing during the earlier part of the day had been foolish, he resolved to be wiser about the return trip. He knew the name of the street that he wanted, and he made inquiries, or he asked questions, as he went along, and slowly, very slowly, he began to recognize landmarks in the distance. He had to stop and find shelter in the doorway of an empty store when the storm finally broke. It was a fierce, noisy storm, crackling with crooked streaks of lightning across the sky and roaring with a peal after peal of thunder. The rain, when it started at last, came down in sheets so heavy that it blotted out the buildings only a few feet away, emptying a downpour of water that sank into the soil as if thousands of parched mouths beneath the surface were sucking it under. Okay, there are a couple of really good words there. Blotted, okay? The rain came down so heavy that it blotted out the buildings, or blotted or blocked. And then the soil of thousands of parched or dry. Parched means dry mouths beneath the surface. The storm stopped suddenly after about a half an hour, and Georgie set out again along the nearly deserted sidewalk. The darkness by now was deep enough for the car lights that had been turned on because of the storm to remain shining as the lines of traffic wavered like long glowing worms creeping cautiously along the slippery, wet pavement. Okay, the author uses a figurative language device. Do you know what it is when the author uses like or as to compare something to? It says to remain shining as lines of traffic wavered like. So we're comparing traffic like glowing worms. Okay? When the author uses those kinds of figurative language devices, like and as, that's a simile. Okay? The lights were shining like worms. Simile. On page 31, by the time Georgie reached his home neighborhood, the city looked as if it were spread out in a great field of lights. Water from the flooded streets gurgled as it ran down the street sewers. The walls of the apartment houses were checkered with lighted and darkened windows. Entrance halls opening on the street were mostly dark. Someone might be hiding in one of them. Someone like Steve. Georgie hurried past the darkest ones. He knew that the grocery store would be closed by that time. Okay, someone hiding in them might be a little bit of foreshadowing here. Foreshadowing is when the author tries to give you a clue as to what might be coming up next. Okay, they're kind of trying to spark your interest. That's called foreshadowing. That the place would be dark and that there would certainly be no chance of seeing Miss Sims before the next morning. Pulling himself along, he finally reached the school building, standing huge in the wet darkness, all its windows black except when a passing car made some of them flash with gold for a second. Then he took his usual shortcut through the alleys and came at last to the entrance of the building, in which there was an apartment that was neither a home nor a place of real safety, but it was the one spot in all of the city where he had a chance to find a little food and a bed. He climbed the stairs, and as always, listening for a minute outside the door, there was no sound inside, and every room was dark, and so still that he decided his mother must be alone. He hoped so. When he entered the living room, the door creaked a little in spite of his great care in opening it, and at the sound, a light was snapped on. Georgie could see his mother, sprawled as usual on the sofa, fast asleep, and Steve, moving uncertainly as he got out of the only armchair in the room. Georgie gave a shrill scream of terror, and as his mother had told him many times, that made Steve crazy mad. Steve was right. Georgie's scream made Steve crazy mad that night. Okay, we're going to stop there for today, Team Alabama, and we're going to find out what happens next tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day. Add a few facts, add a few questions. What happens to Georgie? What does Steve do? He wanders back to his house would be a fact that you could add after he spent the day running around Tampa looking for a spot to plant his rose bush as a 7-year-old. Mom didn't seem to be worried about it. Have a great rest of your day. We will continue with Lottery Rose tomorrow.